Assalamu alaikum folks, welcome to this episode of Show Me How. Subhanallah, it's not even been a week since I uploaded the last tutorial showing parents how they can understand their child's personality types. And many of you have already been in touch with me to request that I put together a special tutorial for teachers in schools and madrasas, showing them how they can use the same tools to personalize learning for their students. So Jazakumullah khairan to everybody who's been in touch. This episode of Show Me How is specially for you and all the teachers, ustads and ustadas in the schools and madrasas doing a tremendous job in nurturing the next generation. I really hope you find it useful, and inshallah I am pretty confident it will be of great benefit to you and your students. So before I do dive into the tutorial, I just want to take a few minutes to frame the tutorial and explain why personality assessment tools are critical for teachers like yourself. And then inshallah we will dive straight into the how part, which is what these tutorials are about. So now is a good time to grab yourself a cup of coffee, get focused. I'm ready. Are you? Let's go. Okay, so let me start here by saying that I know teachers like you are under immense pressure, and you're doing an amazing job, no doubt. I know this because as someone who spends a lot of time coaching teachers, that the teaching profession is not a job for everyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. It is for gifted people who have the patience. Just take a look at the screen in terms of the challenges that you have to face on a daily basis, and this should be familiar to you. I just often wonder that why would anybody, get up every morning to take on these challenges? It's just amazing. And when you consider the criticism that you face from different angles, not least from the very students that you're trying to transform, it's not an easy task. And so I think the first context I want to provide for this tutorial is to recognize the challenges that you face in dealing with different needs, the different abilities, and also different temperaments of children. So that's the first challenge to recognize. Secondly, in terms of the criticism that you receive from students, I know this because currently we are researching the learning experiences of young people in the country, and having conducted this survey with over 1,000 students, these are some of the opinions that we are receiving, that students have concerns or criticisms of their teachers. Now just take a look at the screen about these stats or these opinions, and just take a few seconds to absorb this information, let it sink in, and ask yourself that could this be the opinions of my students in my class? Could they be talking about me? And is this a reflection on me or teachers in the school? Now, if it is, let me put it this way to you. If you don't want your students to say this about you or your colleagues or the school, then you really need to look at the importance of transforming learning and making learning a personalized experience, or personalizing learning for your students, because that will resolve a lot of the issues here. And I know this because from anecdotal experience, I can say this much. Two things. Number one, educators who have an insight into the psychology of their learners, so they understand how the learners are wired inside out, they will do far better in transforming those students than those teachers who dive into the teaching profession blindly or obsessed with teaching information to students, without any regard for the psychology or how one student differs from another. And so please take this with a pinch of salt. I am your critical friend, and I just felt the need to share this context with you to demonstrate why I believe personality assessments inside of the classroom and understanding your learners will help you and the learners massively. It will make your teaching experience a lot more fruitful, impactful, and it certainly will enrich your relationship with your learners. So I feel that this is not something that should be considered as a nafal, in other words, an option. Rather, it should be seen as a fard ain of teaching. In other words, it should be a primary duty of every teacher to carry out personality assessments of their learners. Now, this is an image that you should be all familiar with. No doubt you've seen this being circulated. I wanted to share this here before we dive into the tutorial, because it summarizes the issue with the education system and how it doesn't cater for the various different learning styles or the different personalities. And what we have to recognize from this is that the reality is this: for us and our learners, that the success means different things for different people. The routes or the route to achieve success or reach our destination is also going to be different and unique for each and every one of us. And this is why I feel that personality tests have a lot more, they're a lot more beneficial than you might think, or it meets the eye. Whether that you take these at home or in school, the tests will be very useful for providing you insight into how students are wired and, give you sort of an insight into their weaknesses and strengths. But most importantly, I feel it will help you determine as a teacher which path is the best one to take for each student in order to get them to reach their destination. So yeah, how many of us have felt like that fish in that bowl? And I think that's a good place to park the why. This tutorial is important, and let's get down to how to do it. Okay, so first things first. I'm not going to talk about the tests as much as I'm going to talk about what to do with them inside of your classroom and how it can be used for the different personality types. But before I do dive in, you want to look at this tutorial that I've done before. It's available in the playlist on our channel. What you can do to keep up to speed with these tutorials, which are very much interlinked and they're coming out quite regularly, is hit the subscribe button, ring the bell notification so you can keep up to speed with that. Now, in terms of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to personalize learning for students using the MBTI tools. For those of you who don't know what MBTI is, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. It's mentioned in the tutorial that I've just shown you. Also, you can find links to the tool in the caption section below, and I will, towards the end of this tutorial, show you where you can go for further information and particularly to take the tests. So yeah, our goal in terms of personalizing learning in the classroom should be to start with the identification of a student's personality type. And in doing that, we want to see the learner from inside out, i.e. we want to identify the psychology type along with their strengths and also their preferences. And when we do that, we will start to understand a couple of things. Firstly, we will understand about their learning style, what works for them and also what doesn't work for them. Secondly, we will look at communication skills for them. In other words, how they authentically express themselves and how they like to be communicated to. And the combination of these two things will allow us to then, understand, or it will provide food for thought, how we should adapt the learning environment and, most importantly, our teaching style to accommodate the needs of each learner. And then last but not least, with a combination of these three things, we should be able to identify the suitable route or the routes that each learner needs to achieve their destination, whatever that success looks like for each learner. So a starting point for all teachers, I would strongly say, is to identify the personality of your students and their preferences. And in my teaching experience, I have found the MBTI test to be very powerful, and it's been amazing. There are other tests that you can definitely use. I'm just talking about MBTI because it works for me and it has worked for over 10 years for me. But I've lost count of the amount of positive testimonials that I've received from both the students and the teachers in helping them understand themselves better, and also for the teachers to understand how they can shape their learning and the learning environment for the students. One teacher said to me, most notably, I can remember this, is personality tests are a great way to make learning fun, also personal, and it really makes life a lot easier in terms of workload. For the student, it makes it easier because, especially when education can come across confusing for them and they're disengaged. So what should you do? First things first, I really strongly encourage every teacher who is watching this to try one personality test. It can be any of the personality tests that are out there. I'm encouraging you to use MBTI because, like I said, it's a personal experience and it's worked for me. Try one test within the first few weeks of the school term. So this is what we do at Ilm to Amal, is that before we go in to transform learners or try to teach them, we don't assume that we know what they need or what they want. We go in and spend the first few sessions in the first few weeks trying to understand each learner and how they differ from one another. And only once we've got a good understanding of their personality type, as well as their love languages and emotional needs, then we will go into teaching them anything and everything. Okay, so by doing this, not only is it a fun activity for your class to take, especially after a summer break or a holiday break, but it also allows you, the teacher, to better plan your lessons and choose the right activities, as well as shape the assessment, that you need to, evaluate learning during the term time. And of course, it opens up lines of communication and sparks meaningful conversations. For sure, there will be some personalities that might clash with others, more with others than they do with some others. And honestly, I think that's a good thing to identify early on. Obviously, the whole point of these personality assessments is to prove that anyone can get along with everyone, if only we were able to understand them better and appreciate the differences, how we are all different. Now, in terms of MBTI personality assessment tool and what it measures, I think just in case there are people who are tuning into this tutorial and haven't seen anything before, or they don't have a prior knowledge of what MBTI is, I'm just going to very quickly break this down and then dive straight into how we can utilize it in the tutorial. The framework that is provided by MBTI really measures 4 things, and it shows us how we have individual differences, and for you as a teacher, it will allow you to understand these individual differences amongst your students, in particular how they gain energy or where they gain the energy from. Number 2, where they gather information or how they trust the information. Number 3, how they process information to make decisions. And last but not least is how they implement that information. In other words, how they approach life or learning or work, and yourself perhaps as a teacher. So let's break this down, those 4 things down into what I think are going to be 8 dimensions to start with. Okay, so first thing that we mentioned was about where do you get your energy from, right? The 2 types here. If you get your energy from the outside world and other people around you, that makes you extroverted. You're an extroverted person. Okay, but if on the other hand you get it from internal, or internally you derive your energy from yourself, that makes you introverted. And this isn't about whether you like people or you get on with people. Okay, this is about where you get your energy from. It's got nothing to do with whether you're shy or you like people. That's a separate issue. This is to do with where you get your energy from. Secondly, what kind of information do you prefer to use? This is about how you trust the information that's presented to you. So if you trust the information that the world around you presents to you and you take that as absolute, then you're of the sensing type. But if on the other hand, you question that, or you rely on yourself in terms of your imagination, your gut, and then you are of the intuition type. And thirdly, where or how do you process information to make those decisions? This will either be about you are headstrong or heartstrong. In other words, if you, if you're very logical and you rely on logic, then you're of the thinking type. On the other hand, if you are led by emotions and value that, then you're of the feeling type. So last but not least, we have how do you then deal with the world around you, or how do you implement the information that you receive? And again, two types here. You're either of the judging type or the perceiving type. And judging isn't that you're judgmental. What this means is that, you know, how do you organize your life events, and, you know, you stick to it. That's what judging means, that you're very much focused and easy to, you know, you are able to implement the information in an organized way, and you want to stick to a certain path or stick to what you know best. Perceiving, on the other hand, is about exploring alternatives and looking into all sorts of possibilities rather than just sticking to one plan. So there you have 8 dimensions that you are able to differentiate your learners from. And those 8 dimensions will lead to 16 different personality types, which have been, you know, researched deep and well thought out. And we belong, as humans, and also your students will belong to one of these core personality types. I'll let you absorb this information from the Myers-Briggs Foundation. I found this quote and I thought it was really pertinent to share here. Just take that in about the benefits of taking MBTI into the classroom, and we'll get straight into it in a few ticks. It really is about you as a teacher considering different teaching approaches based on the needs of your students. And in order to do that, you really need to take a personality test for yourself and also for your students, get them to do it too. So utilizing MBTI in the classroom, let's look at the benefits and how to do that in terms of tailoring the learning and adjusting your teaching style to suit the needs of your students in terms of, you know, the preferred style of learning. And I see 4 main ways that MBTI can aid yourself, the teacher, shape the learning experience, and also shape the learning environment where learning takes place. Number 1, it will allow you to understand how to communicate as a teacher and also how to personalize learning for each student. Number 2, recognizing that everyone is different and we express ourselves in different ways, or we learn in different ways, we need to look at how to tailor assessment and evaluation of learning for each style. So one style doesn't work, it's not one size fits all. We need to look at different ways to be able to make it fairer. Number 3, most definitely you should be able to see how to reinforce positive reinforcement or reward and motivate your students, and thereby improve performance and their engagement levels. And last but not least, which I know lots of teachers want to, you know, they want a magic wand that can sort this problem out, which is how to manage behavior and discipline the students. Now, just take a step back, look at those 4 things I've got on the slide here. This is what MBTI can do. It really can help you. And I know this because I've got lived experience, 10 years of experience, or 15 years rather, of how to use personality assessments to understand your learners. And look at that. Look at what it can give you. So let's dive into it. I think it really is a time for an example. Let's demonstrate this by plucking out one personality type and seeing how these 4 things can be, you know, used to personalize learning for that type. So let's take INTJ. They are a rare type, also known as the masterminds or architects. So how would you tailor learning for this type of student? Firstly, once you get your identification of your student's personality type, is to understand it. So let's break this down in a few points. To summarize, an INTJ, they have an original mind, okay? So they're very driven to achieve goals, they're independent learners, they analytical thinkers, very linear, they love asking questions, especially the why questions, so they need to know the purpose, and they seek clear objectives very early on. They're very linear, as I mentioned, logical and organized, so that makes them good planners. In a nutshell, you need to understand the personality and what that personality is. Once you've done that, that will allow you to then work out the comfort zone and also the zone of frustration for each personality type. So when it comes to learning, you will be able to appreciate how each type is comfortable with what type of learning. So how is learning improved or enhanced, as well as understanding how learning is hindered. So for an INTJ, this is what learning should be like, or how learning should, how learning is improved. It needs to be intensive and systematic. Material needs to be intellectually challenging, because if you remember, they very much are driven by the head, and analytical thinkers. Information needs to be presented at a moderate pace because they think a lot, and so they need to absorb, and they're questioning why all the time. The purpose, as I mentioned, alongside the objectives, need to be very clear, as well as the historical context needs to be provided very early on for them to understand why they need to learn what they're learning. So that's an example of how learning is improved. And again, you can also understand how learning is hindered. So you can see from the examples I've put on here for an INTJ that they don't like taking in significant amounts of information, especially if it comes at a fast pace, because it doesn't give them time to absorb and think. If the material is vague, confusing, or even shallow, that means that knowledge is not being broadened or deepened, and it's not intellectually challenging for them, so they will switch off. And last but not least is that because they're led strongly by the head, they don't really tend to deal well with emotions or feelings. So, don't expect them to understand with your emotions as much. Now, thirdly, once you've understood the personality type and then looked at the comfort zone and the zone of frustration, in other words, of looking at how learning should be improved, or how learning should be delivered, or how it could potentially hinder, that will allow you as a teacher now to understand what kind of environment an INTJ needs. So let's look at this. What do INTJs need from their teachers or their school? They need structured classrooms to help them learn. They need learning to be paced moderately. So we've already spoke about that. They like listening and they like reading. So this should help you understand how to deliver education and learning for them. But also it will help you understand assessments, which I'll come on to. Give them a book, give them a task, and let them get on with it, because independent learners are very good at self-teaching. Material needs to be challenging, so your resources that you prepare for them might need to be different to how you prepare it for other personality types and abilities. And last but not least is, as I mentioned, about the assessments. They prefer essays or projects and presentations, so use that as a way to assess what they have learned. So you can clearly see, again, if you step back, how personality types assessment can be used to shape the learning environment. And last but not least, then, how do you motivate or discipline students? Now, for INTJs, they don't really require positive reinforcement as in the same way or as much as other personality types might. So it's not about what you motivate them with as much as it's about how you motivate them and who motivates them, or who rewards them. And because they're very much competitive and goal-driven, they are strong-willed, so they'll do whatever it takes to achieve their goals, and they'll get things done very efficiently. So they can be stubborn, they can come across very arrogant, they like to win every argument. So often they can draw energy not necessarily from positive reinforcement, but actually from the negativity that they perceive from the enemies in the room, the opponent or the students sat across the classroom. And this can actually help push them to become more competitive and raise the game and strive to beat those people. So when it comes to a positive reinforcement, as I mentioned, it really is useful for them if they know it's coming from a sincere place and it's not something that's been shared with them just to make them feel good. So they're very sensitive to that. And last but not least is that, the people that they respect and trust, if they are the ones who are giving them the praise or the encouragement or recognition, this will definitely inspire them to do wonderful things. This is what they find quite rewarding. So again, step back, you can see how MBTI assessments can be used for positive reinforcement and also disciplining and managing behavior. Now, what I've presented to you up until now is something between a basic to an intermediate level of using the MBTI tool. There is an advanced tool for teachers to consider, but that requires a whole tutorial in itself and something for another time. But I'm just going to mention this here, that you can see from this grid on the screen that you know, the personality types, there are common denominators, so you can start to spot patterns in the different types of personalities. From a teaching perspective, this can make things a lot easier because you can form clusters. So you can see here now people that are, you know, have intuition and feeling. That's the green section here. They can be, you know, one cluster. People who are very strong on the NT, so intuition and thinkers, they can be one cluster, and so forth. So you can see 4 clusters emerging. And psychologists have done work in this area which show you, you know, how certain personalities, so 4 different personalities in each one cluster will have common denominators, and this can allow you to form clusters. Look, you could do one of 2 things here. Either you can appeal to one cluster in a different way, so in a nuanced way. For the optimists, you can deal with them in a different way to the way you deal with the pragmatists, okay, and so forth. That's one way. Or you can, you know, use learners from one cluster against another cluster, depending on the task. That might be fun, it might be frustrating, and depending on time. That's how you can do it. So you can work within one cluster, or you can take one cluster and work, get them to work with another cluster. So this is an advanced use of MBTI. I just wanted to throw that out there if you're looking to work smarter and delve into it deeper. But most importantly, look at it this way, folks. If you have 20, 30 students who have, each one's got different personality type, really where you should start is not with them, but with yourself. Assess your own personality type, because you'll be able to see how your personality shapes your teaching style. And that, for me, is a precursor before you try to understand your students and trying to help cater for their personality type. So I hope you can understand the importance of that. So where does one go to get a personality test with MBTI? There are several places that you can go to. Lots of different tests are available now online and also in print. If you wanted to print them off and give them to your students, you can find this on the internet. I'm going to recommend 3 sites that I have tried and know work. If you have learners who are in the primary age bracket, so anything in Key Stage 2 onwards, from 7 to 11, there's icould.com who have a buzz quiz. The link can be found in the section below this video. That's a good one to use. And again, if your students are quite young and struggling and need some assistance, either you can do that in class time, or you can give it to their parents to do outside of the class. And for older students, humanmetrics.com is a very, very good site. And another one of my favorites is 16personalities.com. Again, the links are in the section below. These are both very good, lots of information. The tests are available online. And, you know, 15, 20 minutes per student, excuse me, is worth the investment early on, you know, that first week of the school time. Okay, folks, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope it's been useful. If it has, please leave us a comment or a question in the section below. We'll do our best to get back to you. Please do like the video, share it with other teachers that you know in your institute or in the school and madrasa community. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. There's lots of videos coming out, and it's worth ringing the bell notification to keep up to speed. Until the next tutorial, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.